The Combat Information Center feels like a cave built from screens, chilled air, and the low hum of electricity that never sleeps. Your eyes sting from the glow, your throat is dry, and somewhere beyond the bulkheads, the ocean is just black noise. At first it looks normal. A few contacts, clean labels, steady confidence bars, green status lights that quietly promise, we have this. Then, the number in the corner ticks up again, and you feel your stomach tighten like the instant before a roller coaster drops. You hear it in the room too, a tiny change in breathing, the way voices get softer, the way keyboards get faster, the way everyone stops moving their shoulders and starts moving only their hands. Layered defense is supposed to feel like a fortress, multiple rings of protection, multiple chances to stop the threat, a safety net, under a safety net, under a safety net. This is Battletech Declassified. Modern Warfare Explained. Here is the uncomfortable truth. A swarm does not beat layered defense by being stronger than each layer. It beats layered defense by being too many things at once, forcing the whole system to make choices faster than it was designed to make them. In saturation, the first thing that breaks is not a missile. It is timing. The invisible rhythm that keeps detection, tracking, decision, and engagement in sync. Most people picture layers like stacked armor plates. In reality, layered defense is a timeline, a sequence of steps that must happen in the right order at the right speed, or the stack becomes decoration. Think of catching a ball. First you see it, then you judge its path, then you move your hands, then you grab it, then you check if you actually caught it. A ship does the same thing, just with sensors and software instead of eyes and hands. The chain looks simple on a slide. Detect, track, identify, assign, engage, assess. Each word is a layer. Each word takes time. Each word consumes attention, processing, and bandwidth. Under normal conditions, the chain has slack. A few targets arrive. The system has time to double-check. Operators have time to confirm. Weapons have time to reload. The radar has time to repaint the sky. A swarm removes slack. It is like 20 balls thrown at you at once. You do not fail because your hands forgot how to catch. You fail because physics does not allow your hands to be in 20 places at one time. Every defensive layer is designed around assumptions, not just range and speed, but quantity. How many tracks can the radar hold? How many objects can the software correlate? How many threats can the system assign before the queue backs up? Engineers rarely say it like that in public, but the system has a budget for attention, a budget for time, a budget for shots. In normal combat, those budgets feel generous. A few incoming missiles, a few aircraft, a few ambiguous contacts. The system can focus, sort, and respond. A swarm is a budget attack. It is designed to make you spend your limited resources faster than you can refill them. Not only missiles and ammunition, but also radar revisits, CPU cycles, data link messages, and human decisions. This is why layered defense can look unstoppable in peacetime demos and still feel fragile in real saturation. The demo shows capability. Saturation tests capacity. Capability is what you can do once. Capacity is how long you can keep doing it when the pressure does not stop. Detection sounds simple. Radar sees. But radar does not see like a camera. It paints the world in slices, like a lighthouse beam sweeping through fog, then tries to guess what is real. In a clean sky, detection is easy. A strong return, a stable pattern, an object that behaves like an object. In a swarm, the sky becomes a crowded classroom. Everyone talks at once. Some are real threats. Some are decoys. Some are fragments. Some are drones, built to look like something else. Some are low and slow, hiding in sea clutter. So the radar has to work harder just to separate signal from ocean. As the track count rises, the radar must choose where to look more often. It cannot stare at everything equally. It must schedule its attention, spending more time on some sectors, less time on others. That is the first crack. Detection becomes a resource allocation problem. The system is not asking, "Can I see it?" It is asking, "Can I afford to look there again?" before it matters. A track is a promise. It says, this object is here, moving like this, and it will likely be there next. The weapon does not fire at the dot, it fires at the prediction. Tracking is harder than detection because it demands continuity. You must keep checking, updating, and linking returns to the same object, even when objects cross, split, disappear, or mimic each other. In a swarm, tracks breed like sparks. The software tries to keep them organized, but it has to decide what belongs to what. Which dot is the same drone you saw 5 seconds ago? Which dot is a new one? Which dot is a ghost created by clutter? Now add the simple fact that the radar cannot repaint every object as often as it wants. Some updates get delayed. Predictions get stale. A stale track is like throwing a punch at where someone was standing a second ago. When tracking slips, everything downstream slips with it. Identification becomes uncertain. Weapon assignment becomes riskier. Engagement becomes wasteful. In saturation, tracking is where the machine starts making confident mistakes. Identification sounds like a label. In practice, it is a debate. Is it a cruise missile? Is it a drone? Is it a decoy? Is it a harmless return? Is it a weapon at all? To identify, the system may fuse multiple sensors: radar, electro-optical, electronic support measures, maybe even off-board cues. Fusion takes time and bandwidth. A swarm exploits that. It presents many objects that look similar enough to force extra checking and different enough to break simple rules. Think of a bouncer at a door checking IDs. If 10 people arrive per minute, the bouncer can be strict. If 200 people arrive at once, the bouncer must either rush or the line becomes a stampede. In saturation, identification becomes triage. The system cannot fully interrogate every contact. It must guess more often. And every guess has a price. If you guess wrong and treat a decoy as a real threat, you waste shots. If you guess wrong and treat a real threat as low priority, you lose something you cannot replace. Assignment is the moment the system decides who gets attention, which threats are must kill, which threats are monitor, which threats are ignore for now. This is where people imagine a clean algorithm: highest speed, closest range, greatest damage potential, simple. But saturation ruins clean lists. The list is too long, the timeline is too short, and weapons are not infinite. Now the choices turn ugly. If you have 10 interceptors and 50 incoming objects, you are not choosing what to shoot. You are choosing what to let through. Even if the machine makes the assignments, humans feel the weight. Because every defensive doctrine has a purpose behind it. Protect the ship, protect the mission, protect the people, protect the high-value systems. Saturation forces the system to reveal its priorities in real time. Engagement is the part everyone sees in videos. Missiles launching, guns firing, tracers cutting across the night. But engagement is not just pulling a trigger. It is a pipeline. Weapons have launch limits. Fire control radars have tracking limits. Guns have heat limits. Missiles have reload limits. Vertical launch cells are not vending machines. Once you spend what is loaded, you cannot magically refill it mid-fight. In saturation, you can literally hear the bottleneck, the thump of a launcher, the rapid hammer of a gun, the shouted confirmations, the rising urgency in voices that are trying to stay calm. And here is the Feynman simple version. A weapon can only kill one thing at a time, and often it needs continuous support while it does it. Guidance, illumination, cueing, confirmation. So the swarm does not need to beat your best interceptor. It only needs to keep enough threats alive long enough to crowd your engagement window, like pushing too many cars into a single-lane tunnel. Assessment is the quiet step. Did you actually kill it? In saturation, this becomes one of the most dangerous questions on the ship. Because if you assume a kill when it was not a kill, you stop shooting at a threat that is still coming. But confirming a kill takes sensor time and human attention. It may take additional radar looks, electro-optical confirmation, tracking the debris, making sure the object is no longer maneuvering. A swarm punishes assessment in both directions. If you spend too much time confirming, you lose time for the next threats. If you do not confirm enough, you waste shots or you miss survivors. This is like trying to clean up broken glass while more glass is still falling. You want certainty, but the environment does not allow it. So the system begins to operate on probability. Likely kill, probable kill, maybe kill. In saturation, maybe is where bad surprises live. Now we can name the core failure. Layered defense breaks under saturation because the layers are not independent. They are coupled steps in a single chain. If detection lags, tracking becomes stale. If tracking becomes stale, identification becomes uncertain. If identification is uncertain, assignment becomes guesswork. If assignment is guesswork, engagement wastes shots. If engagement wastes shots, assessment becomes chaos. This is desynchronization. The system's rhythm breaks. It is like a relay race, where runners are fast, but the handoff is sloppy, and the baton keeps getting dropped. In peacetime tests, the baton handoffs look smooth because the number of runners is small. In a swarm, you have too many handoffs at once, and the baton is slippery and the track is dark. The scariest part is that each layer can still appear to function. The radar still spins. The software still draws tracks. The missiles still launch. The guns still fire. But the chain as a whole is losing coherence. It is doing many things, just not the right things, in the right order, at the right time. People talk about decoys as if they are side characters. In saturation, decoys are often the leading actors. A decoy does not need to survive. It only needs to consume your attention for a few seconds. It needs to look real enough to force a track, real enough to force identification, real enough to get assigned a weapon. If you spend $1 million interceptor on a cheap decoy, the attacker did not just trade money for money. They traded your limited inventory for time. They bought a gap in your engagement schedule. Here is the simple picture. Your defense is a doorman with a limited number of no stamps. The attacker brings 50 people wearing masks, and a few real threats hidden among them. The doorman is not defeated by the strongest person in line. The doorman is defeated by the crowd. Decoys also make tracks cross and merge, which makes tracking harder. They can be shaped to confuse radar returns. They can fly patterns that look like missiles. They can reflect signals to inflate apparent numbers. So saturation is not only many threats, it is many decisions. And decoys exist to multiply decisions faster than you can solve them. Even with automation, humans remain in the loop for rules of engagement, safety checks, and strategic judgment. Humans also monitor the system because no commander wants a black box making lethal choices without oversight. But attention is finite. In saturation, the human brain becomes another bottleneck. Your eyes can only focus on so many cues. Your working memory can only hold so many tracks. Your decision-making slows when stress rises, even for experts. And the body has its own soundtrack: higher heart rate, tighter jaw, smaller breathing, tunnel vision. This is why swarms feel like psychological weapons. They overload not just sensors, but minds. They create a tempo where the correct decision is always one step behind the clock. The crew can be brilliant and still be drowned by volume, like a chess grandmaster who can calculate deeply, but not if someone keeps knocking pieces off the board every second. In that moment, layered defense stops being a technical problem and becomes a human problem. The best system in the world still needs people who can stay coherent, while the sky turns into a spreadsheet that will not stop growing. Is less than #0. 5# is greater than. In saturation, you are managing 3 budgets at the same time, and you can feel each one shrinking. First is the shot budget. Interceptors, gun bursts, electronic warfare options. Everything you spend cannot be spent again. Even cheap shots have limits. Barrels heat, magazines empty, time to cool exists. Second is the time budget. Every thread is moving. Every second you spend identifying one track is a second you did not spend tracking another. Every second you spend confirming a kill is a second you did not spend preventing the next one. Third is the attention budget, sensor scheduling, data link capacity, CPU cycles, operator focus, fire control channels. These are invisible, but they are the gears that make the visible weapons work. A swarm targets all three budgets at once. That is why it is so effective. A single missile mostly targets your shot budget. A swarm also attacks your time budget and your attention budget. This is the part people miss. The defender is not only trying to destroy objects, the defender is trying to preserve budgets long enough to keep the kill chain synchronized. When budgets collapse, layers stop stacking and start tripping over each other. Defensive doctrine loves the word priority. It implies you can sort threats like files in a folder. Highest risk on top. Solve it. Move on. Saturation is what happens when everything is priority. Some drones are cheap, but carry a warhead large enough to mission kill a radar. Some are unarmed, but act as eyes, guiding others. Some are decoys, meant to be shot. Some fly low to force late detection. Some fly high to maximize sensor load. Some come from unexpected angles to break your sensor schedule. So how do you prioritize? By range? By speed? By heading? By payload? By confidence? By what you can actually hit? Each rule has failure modes. Prioritize by closest, and you may ignore the one that will blind your radar in 30 seconds. Prioritize by fastest, and you may waste weapons on decoys designed to look fast. Prioritize by most dangerous, and you may spend too long debating dangerous while the clock keeps moving. This is where the phrase "who lives, who dies" stops being dramatic and becomes literal. Priority and saturation is not just about survival. It is about what you are willing to lose, to save what you cannot afford to lose. Here is the pattern. In early seconds, the system looks strong because it is doing what it was designed to do: detect, track, assign, shoot. Then the cues start backing up. Tracks update less often. Confidence drops. Identification becomes rough. Assignment becomes more aggressive. Engagement becomes wasteful. Assessment becomes uncertain. At the same time, the geometry tightens. The closer threats get, the fewer options you have. Engagement windows overlap. Weapons compete for the same fire control resources. Operator attention narrows. This is when layered defense stops being a stack of rings and becomes a funnel. Everything is being squeezed into the last few seconds and the last few meters, and you can feel it as urgency turns into compression, like the air is being pushed out of the room. A fortress works when you have time between walls. Saturation removes the space between walls. It turns your elegant layered plan into a single crowded moment where every layer arrives at once, and they all demand the same scarce things: time, attention, and shots. And once the funnel forms, a swarm does not need perfection. It only needs one survivor, one leaker, one object you did not have the budget to notice, to track, to identify, to assign, and to stop in time. Radar is not a constant stare. It is a repeating glance. Imagine a security camera that takes snapshots instead of video. If the hallway is empty, snapshots are fine. If someone sprints through, snapshots can miss the exact moment it matters. In saturation, the radar has to ration its glances. It cannot repaint every sector as often as it wants, so it builds a schedule, a priority list for where it will look next. The swarm exploits that schedule. Some targets fly to stay inside the worst parts of your radar's attention cycle. Low over waves, in clutter, near other returns, near land, near the edge of coverage. That is when the radar starts skipping frames. Tracks do not vanish. They simply stop being refreshed in time. The screen still looks busy, but it becomes a busy lie, like a map that updates too slowly for a moving car. And once the radar skips, everything else starts guessing. Tracking guesses, identification guesses, assignment guesses. Your defense becomes less like a surgeon and more like someone trying to swat flies in a dark room. A modern combat system has a limit, even if it is a very high limit, on how many tracks it can hold, update, and fuse. Think of it like a crowded farm where each animal needs feeding, checking, and tagging. If you have 10 animals, you can care for each one. If you have 10,000, you begin making shortcuts. In a swarm, the system does not only track real threats, it tracks reflections, fragments, decoys, split returns, and objects that briefly look like one thing and then another. Tracks also interact. They cross, they merge, they separate. Two drones fly close. The radar sees one blob, then sees two, then sees one again. Every time that happens, the system spends effort resolving identity. It tries to decide, is this the same object, or a new one, or a ghost? Now imagine that multiplied by hundreds at once. The track farm gets overloaded. The system starts pruning, simplifying, dropping low-confidence tracks, and that is exactly what a smart swarm wants, because low confidence is where real threats can hide. Automation is powerful, but it has a dangerous feature. It can look calm while it is falling behind. The interface stays clean. Icons stay color-coded. Labels still appear. There is no obvious alarm that says your kill chain is desynchronizing. It is like a phone that is overheating but still shows a smooth home screen. Apps open, notifications pop, everything looks normal until you tap and there is a delay, then another delay, and suddenly nothing responds. In saturation, delays are the enemy. A 1-second delay in track refresh can mean a weapon fires at the wrong predicted point. A 2-second delay can mean you are shooting where the threat was, not where it will be. The trap is false confidence. Operators see the system working and assume it is working well. Meanwhile, the backlog grows, the decision queue grows, the engagement schedule becomes crowded. This is how layered defense can look fine right up until it leaks. The leak is not a surprise to the math. It is a surprise to the humans, who trusted the calm face of the machine. Is less than #0. 5# is greater than. People imagine jamming as a simple off switch. In reality, electronic warfare is often a confusion engine. In saturation, confusion is worth more than invisibility. If you can make the defender hesitate for 3 seconds, you can create a hole large enough for a threat to pass through. A swarm can use electronic attack to blur the picture, raise the noise floor, generate misleading returns, or force the radar to work harder to achieve the same clarity. Even mild interference has leverage. It does not need to blind the whole ship. It only needs to make the system spend extra time and extra processing on every track. That is like making every page in a textbook slightly smudged. You can still read it, but it takes longer, and in a timed exam, longer is failure. Electronic warfare also attacks coordination. If data links are degraded, queues arrive late. If queues arrive late, engagement decisions are based on stale information. So EW is not always the hammer. In saturation, it is the oil spilled on the staircase. It turns every step into a risk, and the whole layered system starts slipping at once. When you picture defense, you picture missiles, but the real shots are opportunities in time, in attention, and in fire control. A ship can only support so many simultaneous engagements. Some weapons need guidance channels. Some need illumination. Some need tracking priority. Some need safe firing arcs. In a swarm, the limiting factor can become the number of slots the system can handle, not the number of missiles in the cells. Think of it like a call center. You might have 1,000 customers and 1,000 solutions, but if you have only 50 agents, you can only solve 50 calls at once. The rest wait, and waiting is where they get angry, or in this case, where threats get closer. Saturation creates a fight over slots. Threats that arrive slightly earlier get assigned first, and the late-arriving threats get pushed into the backlog. A smart attacker times the swarm so the backlog peaks exactly when the most dangerous wave arrives. The defender does not lose because they ran out of weapons. They lose because they ran out of time slots to use them effectively. Priority sounds like a peaceful word. In saturation, it becomes a knife fight. The system must decide which tracks get high refresh, which get low refresh, which get fused, which get ignored, which get weapons, which get watched. If you prioritize the closest, you risk being blindsided by a standoff threat that disables a key sensor. If you prioritize the fastest, you risk being baited by decoys built to look fast. If you prioritize most dangerous, you risk spending too long defining dangerous. And priority is not only about lethality, It is about mission. It is about what must survive for the ship to keep fighting. Radar arrays, data links, flight deck operations, command spaces, propulsion. That is why saturation feels personal. It forces the defense to reveal its values, protect the ship's brain, or protect its body, protect people, or protect the mission. This is the moment layered defense stops being a diagram and becomes a series of human decisions under pressure, with incomplete information, and a clock that does not care how careful you want to be. Is less than #0. 5 hash is greater than. In a calm scenario, you can choose the best weapon for each threat. In saturation, best can become wasteful. A high-end interceptor might be the safest option for one target, but if you use it on everything, you empty your magazine on threats that did not deserve that level of attention. This is like using a fire extinguisher on steam from a kettle. It solves the symptom, but it consumes your limited resource for when the real fire arrives. Swarms are built to exploit this fallacy. They present targets that look dangerous enough to trigger expensive responses, especially if the defender has limited time to classify. So the defender must downgrade intelligently. Guns for some, short-range missiles for some, soft kill measures for some, do nothing for some. But downgrading increases risk. It increases the chance a threat survives, and each survivor forces another decision, another shot, another slot, another piece of attention. That is the trade. In saturation, efficiency is survival, and survival rarely looks like choosing the best tool every time. It looks like choosing the cheapest acceptable tool fast enough to keep the chain synchronized. Soft kill means you try to break the threat without physically destroying it, jamming its link, spoofing its navigation, confusing its seeker, seducing it away. In theory, soft kill is perfect for swarms. It is cheaper than firing interceptors, and it can scale. But soft kill has a problem: confidence. You often cannot be sure it worked until time passes, and time is exactly what saturation steals. If you jam a drone, did it lose control, or did it switch to autonomy? If you spoof a seeker, did it turn away, or did it ignore the deception? If you break a data link, did the swarm stop, or did it continue on pre-planned routes? Soft kill also competes for resources. Electronic warfare systems have their own capacity, their own timing, their own targeting, their own operators. So in saturation, soft kill becomes another layer that can desync. It can also become a false comfort. You may believe you handled a set of tracks. Then seconds later, those tracks reappear closer than before. Soft kill is powerful, but in a swarm fight, it must be paired with ruthless assessment. If you cannot verify, you must assume some will survive. Did we kill it sounds simple. In saturation, it is a gamble. Confirmation takes attention. You need sensor time, track continuity, sometimes visual confirmation, sometimes a second sensor to validate. But the fight does not pause while you confirm. New threats are still coming. Old threats are still moving. The queue is still growing. If you spend too much time confirming kills, you miss opportunities to stop the next wave. If you do not confirm enough, you assume kills that never happened, and you stop defending against survivors. This is like trying to count which fireworks already exploded while more fireworks are launching. You can be precise, or you can be fast, and in saturation, you rarely get both. So the defense slides into probability: likely kill, probable kill, uncertain. Those words are polite ways of saying, we do not have time to be sure. A swarm is designed to live inside uncertainty. It wants you to doubt your own success. It wants you to waste shots on already destroyed targets and ignore still living ones. Uncertainty is the attacker's oxygen. As threats get closer, geometry tightens. Engagement windows overlap. Defensive rings collapse toward the ship like a tightening noose. In the early stage, you can distribute attention, long-range sensors, long-range interceptors, time to classify, time to plan. In the late stage, Everything happens at once. The system must track many objects in the same slice of sky, assign weapons in the same seconds, and fight in the same small volume of air. That creates a funnel. All your elegant layered spacing compresses into a single crowded moment, where every layer competes for the same resources. This is why saturation often feels sudden. It was not sudden. It was approaching like a wave. But the human brain notices it most when the wave hits the shallow part of the beach and rises quickly. A fortress needs distance between walls. Saturation removes distance. It turns your layers into one thick knot of simultaneous decisions. And a knot is hard to untie under stress. By the time you realize you are in the funnel, your best options are already spent, and you are fighting not to win cleanly, but to survive the last 30 seconds without a leak. Here is the brutal math. You do not need to miss many. You only need to miss one that matters. A single drone can strike a radar face. A single missile can mission kill a key sensor. A single warhead can start a fire that forces the ship into damage control mode, reducing combat effectiveness at the worst moment. Swarms are built around this. They do not demand perfection. They demand probability. If you throw 100 objects and the defender stops 99, the attacker still wins if the one that survives hits the right place. This is why layered defense can be both true and fragile. It can stop a lot. It can look heroic. It can still lose. It is the same idea as a goalie stopping 99 shots. If the 100th goes in during overtime, no one remembers the 99. The leak is often not the strongest threat. It is the threat that arrived at the worst timing, in the worst clutter, with the most confusing signature, during the worst backlog peak. And once a leak happens, it can cascade. Sensors degrade. Operators lose clarity. The system becomes more blind, more stressed, more wasteful. Saturation is designed to turn one leak into a widening crack. Layered defense is a chain. That means failure is contagious. If a key radar is damaged or forced to shut down, detection degrades. If detection degrades, tracks become stale. If tracks become stale, identification becomes guesswork. If identification becomes guesswork, assignments become wasteful. If assignments become wasteful, the shot budget collapses. This domino chain is why attackers aim at the brains of defense. They do not always need to sink the ship. They can cripple its senses. And the scary part is that the ship can still fight while crippled. Guns still fire, missiles still launch. It just fights with a worse picture, and worse pictures create worse decisions. Think of trying to drive with a cracked windshield in heavy rain. The car still runs. The road still exists. But your margin for error disappears. Saturation thrives on disappearing margins. It makes every small mistake more expensive. It makes every delayed confirmation more dangerous. It makes every wasted shot feel like a future regret. So layered defense does not simply break. It erodes. It loses fidelity. It loses timing. It loses confidence. And then, at the worst possible second, it loses the one thing it cannot lose: coherence. The intuitive response is, add more layers, more missiles, more guns, more sensors, more automation. But adding layers can also add complexity, and complexity increases the number of handoffs that must stay synchronized. If you add a new sensor, you must fuse it. Fusion takes bandwidth and processing. If you add a new weapon, you must schedule it. Scheduling takes attention and fire control capacity. If you add new automation, you must validate it, monitor it, trust it. Trust takes time and training. It is like adding lanes to a highway that feeds into the same bridge. You may reduce congestion upstream, but the bridge becomes the bottleneck. In saturation, bottlenecks matter more than totals. One bottleneck can cap the whole system. Fire control channels can bottleneck. Sensor scheduling can bottleneck. Operator attention can bottleneck. Even doctrine can bottleneck. Rules of engagement. Confirm before fire. Hold fire zones. Safety constraints. So more layers can help, but only if they increase capacity where the bottleneck lives. Otherwise, you get a bigger machine that still chokes at the same point, just with more noise and more opportunities for desync. Capability is what you can do once. Capacity is what you can keep doing under pressure. Saturation attacks capacity. The real defense against saturation is increasing capacity in the kill chain. That means higher track handling, faster sensor updates, smarter prioritization, better fusion under load, and weapons that can engage without demanding constant babysitting. It also means simplifying, reducing unnecessary handoffs, making defaults clearer, training crews for overload conditions so they recognize the early signs of desync. Think of a restaurant again. The fix for a dinner rush is not only better chefs, it is prep work, streamlined menu, clear station roles, reliable communication, and a system that stays organized when the orders spike. In a ship defense fight, that translates to doctrine that assumes the spike. It assumes decoys. It assumes ambiguity. It assumes that confirmation will be imperfect. And it emphasizes one principle: keep the chain coherent. Even imperfect kills are better than perfect chaos. Even a slightly worse solution executed on time can beat a perfect solution chosen too late. Saturation turns war into time management. The winner is often the side whose system stays synchronized 1 minute longer than the other. Layered defense is not dead. It is still the best idea we have. But saturation reveals what layered defense truly is: a race against overload. A swarm forces you to fight 3 invisible enemies: backlog, uncertainty, and desynchronization. It forces hard choices, not because commanders are cruel, but because physics is strict. You cannot engage everything at once. You cannot confirm everything at once. You cannot hold a perfect picture when the sky becomes crowded beyond design assumptions. So the future of naval defense is not only better interceptors, it is systems built for ugly reality, systems that degrade gracefully, systems that keep the kill chain coherent under stress, systems that can treat attention like ammunition and spend it wisely. And if you remember only one metaphor, remember this: layered defense is not a wall, it is a conveyor belt. When the belt runs at normal speed, everything gets sorted, inspected, and handled. When too many packages arrive, the belt jams, workers start throwing boxes, labels peel off, and the mistakes multiply. A swarm wins by jamming the belt. The defender survives by keeping the belt moving, even if it means letting some boxes fall off the side to save the entire line. Every defense system is built on assumptions, and the quietest assumption is quantity. Not just how fast the threat is, or how stealthy, or how clever, but how many arrive before the system can breathe. Peacetime tests rarely stress that assumption the way war does. A demo might show a handful of targets with clean spacing, predictable geometry, and generous time to classify and engage. A swarm is the opposite: messy, overlapping, ambiguous, timed to peak when your queues are already full. So the uncomfortable lesson is simple. Layered defense is often optimized for the threats we expect, not the volume we fear. That is why saturation feels like a cheat code. It attacks the shape of the system, not just the strength of the weapons. Most layered defense works like a brain. Sensors feed a central picture. A central decision assigns weapons. The ship moves as one coordinated organism. That is powerful, until the brain is overloaded. Swarms force a question. Should every decision travel through the same central lane, or should some decisions be pushed outward, closer to the edges, faster, simpler, more local? Distributed defense sounds messy, but it can be resilient. If a local system can detect, classify, and engage without waiting for the whole network to agree, you reduce the queue pressure on the central brain. The trade is control versus speed. Central control is elegant, but it is vulnerable to backlog. Distributed control is less elegant, but it can keep moving when the center is drowning. In saturation, movement matters more than elegance. Is less than #0. 5# is greater than. When people think defense, they count missiles. In saturation, the gatekeeper is often fire control. Some weapons need continuous support, precise tracking, guidance, illumination, confirmation. Those support channels are finite. So you can have plenty of interceptors in the cells and still be limited by how many you can guide at the same time. It is like having a warehouse full of packages but only 2 forklifts. The inventory is not the bottleneck, the handling capacity is. Swarms exploit that by arriving in a way that forces many simultaneous engagements. The defender does not run out of missiles first. The defender runs out of guidance, out of attention, out of slots. That is why the system can feel busy and still feel helpless. There is a cruel economic angle to saturation. It makes you spend expensive things on cheap things. If you fire $1 million interceptor at a drone that costs a tiny fraction of that, you are not losing money alone. You are losing future options. Because the real cost is not the price tag. It is the fact that you only have so many shots loaded and you cannot reload a vertical launch cell like a video game. Swarms are built to turn your magazine into a countdown. The attacker is trying to force panic spending driven by uncertainty and time pressure. The best defense is disciplined spending. Use the cheapest acceptable tool. Reserve high-end shots for high-confidence threats. Accept that you will not be perfectly fair to every track. In saturation, fairness is a luxury. Survival is a budget plan. Is less than #0. 5# is greater than. In calm conditions, doctrine can be detailed. Under saturation, detailed doctrine becomes slow doctrine. The system needs rules that stay usable when the screen is crowded, the timeline is compressed, and certainty is expensive. This is where simple decision heuristics matter. What gets automatic engagement? What gets automatic downgrade? What gets ignored unless it crosses a line? Think of it like emergency medicine. A doctor in a quiet clinic can treat one patient at a time with perfect care. In a mass casualty event, triage rules decide who gets treated first, even if it feels brutal. Saturation is a mass casualty event for the kill chain. The defense must triage tracks, triage weapons, triage attention. Simple rules do not make you smarter. They keep you coherent when you cannot afford to be smart about everything. A ship is not a stationary target in a spreadsheet. It is a moving object that can shape the geometry of the fight. Maneuver can stretch the attacker's timing, force different approach angles, reduce the number of threats that arrive in the same second, and buy breathing room for the kill chain to resynchronize. Even small changes matter. A slight turn can change radar aspect. A course adjustment can shift clutter. A speed change can alter engagement windows. It is like moving in a crowded hallway. If you keep walking straight into the crowd, you get swallowed. If you angle, you create space. You reduce collisions. You keep your momentum. Swarms try to compress space and time. Maneuver tries to expand them. It is not a magic fix, but it is one of the few tools that can reduce peak overload without firing a single shot. Modern defense often relies on cooperative engagement, off-board sensors, shared tracks, data links that turn many platforms into one picture. That can be powerful because it extends detection and adds redundancy. But it also introduces a new saturation channel, network capacity, and network trust. If links are degraded, queues arrive late. If queues arrive late, engagements are based on stale predictions. If the network is flooded with messages, the system must prioritize what to transmit, just like radar must prioritize what to look at. In other words, the network becomes another layer that can desync. Cooperation can increase capacity, but only if the cooperative lane does not collapse under the same overload pressure the local system is already fighting. The easiest swarm to defeat is the swarm that never fully synchronizes. That is why so much modern thinking shifts. Left of launch, targeting scouts, launch platforms, control links, staging areas, and the coordination mechanisms that make many small threats act like one large threat. A swarm is not just objects in the air. It is a system. It has sensors, planning, communications, timing. If you disrupt the system, you reduce the peak load on your defense. This is like stopping a traffic jam by preventing too many cars from entering the highway at the same on-ramp. If you wait until the bridge is already clogged, you are managing disaster. Left of launch is not always possible, but it reveals a deeper truth. The best way to survive saturation is to prevent saturation. If you can reduce the peak, layered defense has room to breathe again. A perfect defense is rare. A defense that fails gracefully is priceless. Graceful degradation means the system loses performance step by step, not all at once. It means when one sensor is degraded, another can carry enough load to keep the chain coherent. It means when identification becomes uncertain, the system defaults to conservative triage rather than panicked spending. It means when the network is noisy, local cues still work. It means when operators are overloaded, the interface becomes simpler, not more demanding. Think of it like a phone in low-power mode. You lose some features, but the core functions survive. In saturation, you want your defense to enter a survivable mode, protecting essentials, maintaining coherence, and avoiding self-inflicted chaos. Swarms aim for collapse. Graceful degradation aims for endurance. Endurance is how you outlast the peak and regain control. Back in the CIC, the room does not feel cold anymore. It feels hot, not from temperature, but from bodies that have been tense for too long. You watch the engagement schedule tighten, the system handing out weapon assignments, like a dealer pushing cards faster than anyone can read them. A decoy gets a high-end interceptor, then another. A low, quiet track is still unresolved because the radar has not looked there in time. A human voice says, "Confirm," and another voice says, "No time." This is where the ship learns a new rule, not a technical rule, a survival rule. You cannot save everything. You must protect what keeps you fighting. Your sensors, your links, your coherence, your ability to see. So the choices become ruthless. Some tracks are downgraded, some are left to short-range defenses, some are treated as noise unless they cross a boundary. The system stops trying to be fair and starts trying to stay synchronized. If layered defense fails when it desynchronizes, then survival means keeping synchronization alive as long as possible. Principle 1. Protect attention. Schedule sensors aggressively. Prune low-value tracks. Reduce unnecessary confirmations. Preserve clarity for the threats that matter. Principle 2. Spend shots like a budget. Use the cheapest acceptable tool. Reserve premium weapons for premium threats. Do not let decoys force panic spending. Principle 3. Shorten handoffs. Reduce delays between detect and engage. Reduce dependencies that require too many approvals. Let local action occur when central lanes are jammed. Principle 4. Accept uncertainty and manage it. You will not know everything. The goal is not perfect knowledge. It is timely enough knowledge to keep the chain coherent. Saturation punishes perfectionism. It rewards disciplined triage. Saturation is not only a ship problem, it is a fleet problem. If one ship is overloaded, nearby ships may need to share the load, share sensors, share engagements, share defensive coverage. That changes formation logic, escort doctrine, and the value of different platforms. It also changes what strength looks like. Strength is no longer only the biggest interceptor or the longest range. It is the ability to handle volume without desync. That can mean more distributed sensors, more autonomous local defense, more soft kill capacity, more magazine depth in cheap interceptors, and better ways to prevent the peak from forming in the first place. Swarms also push a harsh strategic lesson. If cheap attackers can force expensive defenders to spend themselves into exhaustion, then deterrence becomes partly economic. You must be able to afford to defend, not only in theory, but repeatedly, without running out of budgets that cannot be refilled during a fight. When you see headlines that say, "Drones make ships obsolete," or "Layered defense is dead," remember the real mechanism. The key is not magic. It is scheduling. It is cues. It is capacity. It is the difference between doing a hard task once and doing many hard tasks at the same time. A swarm is dangerous because it turns defense into time management under stress. It is like giving an A student 100 math problems with a 1-minute timer. The student is still smart. The timer is the killer. That does not mean defense is hopeless. It means defense must be built around peak reality, not demo reality. It means designing for overload conditions and training for the psychological pressure of triage. So when you hear layered defense failed, translate it into a clearer sentence. The system hit its capacity limits. The kill chain desynchronized. And the attacker exploited the moment the defense could no longer keep the timeline coherent. Eventually, the track count stops rising, not because the attacker got tired, but because the fight has transformed the sky. Some threats are destroyed, some are downgraded, some are still unknown. The room sounds different. Less shouting, more short confirmations. The kind of tired calm that comes after your body has been running on adrenaline and finally realizes it is exhausted. Someone exhales like they have been holding their breath for minutes. Someone wipes their face and realizes their hand is shaking. Someone says, "We are still here," and it is not victory, but it is not defeat either. This is the moment layered defense reveals its final truth. It did not keep you safe by being perfect. It kept you alive by staying coherent long enough to survive the peak. And that is why saturation is the real test. It is not a test of whether your weapons work. It is a test of whether your whole system can keep time when time is being stolen from you. Layered defense is not a wall. It is a choreography. Sensors, software, weapons, and humans moving in rhythm. A swarm tries to break that rhythm by creating too many simultaneous demands, too many tracks to refresh, too many classifications to resolve, too many engagements to schedule, too many kills to confirm. That is why layers break under saturation. Not because each layer is weak, but because the handoffs between layers are fragile when the queue becomes endless. If you want one image to remember, picture a conveyor belt in a factory. At normal speed, every package gets scanned, sorted, and handled. When a flood of packages hits the belt, labels peel off, scanners miss, workers guess, and the whole line jams. The attacker wins by jamming the belt. The defender survives by keeping the belt moving, even if it means letting some packages fall so the system does not collapse.